When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga, Birth, Babies. And today we're diving into a topic that I really did not know a lot about personally. We're talking about IVF. I've had friends that have undergone this process. I've watched many students go through this and understood the excitement of IVF, but I haven't done it myself. So I wanted to know more about it. And I happen to have my cousin, Dr. Donna Drucker, who wrote a book called Fertility Technology. And she and I were talking one day. She's actually written several books. I think this is maybe her fifth. We were talking about her book, and she started to share with me about the history of IVF and really the globalization and the technology behind it. And I thought it would be a really interesting podcast conversation because while many of us might know the outcome that we're hoping for, a bit about the procedure, what she shares about the donors, the surrogacy, the laws, everything that's involved, I thought was fascinating. So I'm really excited for you to hear Donna's conversation about it. We also talk about how race and appearance generally factor into decision-making, things I had not thought about. I was really excited to hear Donna dive in from her perspective as a researcher on this topic. But let me tell you a little bit about my cousin Donna. So Donna J. Drucker is the Assistant Director of Scholarship and Research Development at Columbia University School of Nursing. She has a Master's of Library Science degree and a PhD in history, both from Indiana University. She's the author of 4 books and many articles and shorter publications, and has her 5th book on abortion under contract. So we talk a little bit about that at the end of our conversation, so you can stay tuned to that because Donna shares how hard it is in this day and age to finish her research and write the book on abortion because things are constantly changing. Anyway, I'm excited for you to hear that conversation with Donna. But before I get into that, I always love to give some updates about Prenatal Yoga Center. So going strong, heading into the holiday season. So check the schedule for any changes in our classes because we have classes online 7 days a week, in studios 6 days a week. Of course, we have our full workshop schedule and our teacher training, our prenatal yoga teacher training, our postnatal training, our on-demand classes. Things are an amazing wheel of moving pieces, and I'm just thankful that they're functioning so well thanks to my team. So check all that out on our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. I also want to share that people have actually been reaching out. I do offer the invitation that if you have a guest that you think would be great or an idea of something I should cover on the podcast, to please reach out, and people are. And it's helping me find different either point of views or even whole different topics or people I haven't met that would be great guests. So share this with me because I really am here, not just because I'm a geek and I love to learn, but I want to share this with the community because the students at Prenatal Yoga Center are constantly saying how they've been listening to the podcast and how it's been supporting them and helping them. And that's what I'm here for. I really want to support our community. So thanks for sharing. And a thank you to who is listening, as well as a request of please leave your rating and review of our podcast wherever you can. It helps people find us. All right, that's enough of me. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Donna Drucker.
Feel your max with Brooks Running and the all-new Ghost Max 2. They're the shoes you deserve, designed to streamline your stride and help protect your body. Treat yourself to feel-good landings on an ultra-high stack of super comfy nitrogen-infused cushion that takes the edge off every step, every day. The Brooks Ghost Max 2. You know, technically, they're a form of self-care. Brooks, let's run there. Head to brooksrunning.com to learn more.
Hi, Donna. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Deb. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is so much fun. So I love to be very transparent. So listeners, this is Donna Drucker, also known as Dr. Drucker, but in my house, she's known as Cousin Donna. So it's really fun to see this other side of you and hear more about your academic work, which I've always known about. But I'm excited to dive into some of your work. So the question that I'm going to ask, like, tell me about yourself, feels a little silly because I know quite a bit about you already, but I'm excited. So we're going to talk about IVF because you wrote a book on it. And you're in academics, you know a lot about this. So let's jump in and share with the listeners a little bit about you and what led you to being interested in writing about IVF.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you and your listeners. So I have a PhD in history, and my broader interest has always been the history of science and technology as it intersects with the history of gender and sexuality. I had released a book on contraception for the MIT Press Essential Knowledge series just at the peak of the pandemic in April of 2020. And I was living in Germany at the time, and I realized, first of all, I couldn't go home to the US for a long time. And second, I wanted an academic project to do. And so I thought, why not do a book on the exact opposite of contraception, which of course is fertility technology. And so I researched this book for about a year and a half, and then writing along the way. And then this book on fertility technology, which starts in the mid 1800s and goes through 2022. This book was published in March of 2023.
Oh, okay. So you know a lot about this. So, I mean, I love the history. You know me, I love history. So I would love for you to share a little of the history of IVF from origins to present.
Sure. Some individuals have always been interested in the idea of artificial insemination. And so the idea of kind of creating an animal or a human of your own design goes quite far back, well into the 18th century in Italy. But the more modern history of IVF specifically, and for your listeners who may not know, IVF stands for in vitro fertilization. So that's the idea that a sperm and an egg will come together outside of the body in vitro instead of in vivo, which would mean inside the body. So the sperm and the egg would be fertilized outside the body and then inserted in the body to ideally grow through 9 months and then have a healthy baby at the end. So just to clarify our terms. So one of the first people to try and do this was Dr. John Rock, who was a physician later best known for his research in the birth control pill. And so he had got consent from women who were having hysterectomies in the 1940s, who had agreed to have sex within a couple of days before the operation. And so the idea was to extract an recently ovulated egg from the removed womb of a woman who had had a hysterectomy, and then to mix the egg with sperm cells in a medium to see what they could grow, he and his team. It kind of worked for a few days, like the egg he had a few successes with eggs and sperm lasting maybe, I think, about 7 or 8 days, but this didn't really go anywhere because he thought that, he realized how long this would take to develop. And so he abandoned it for other projects. So the next wave of research on this topic really came about in the mid 1960s, so about 20 years later, in the UK and in Australia. The UK team is better known. Patrick Edwards, who is an embryologist, Robert Stiptoe, and Jean Purdy. The three of them worked for about 15 years on techniques for extracting an egg naturally, so from a woman's natural cycle, mixing it with sperm. And one of the difficulties there was finding a medium in which the egg and the sperm would exist together for a time while the sperm penetrated the egg and then became a blastocyst. That was one of the big hurdles to come over. And then, long story short, in 1978, the first IVF-born baby was appeared in England, and her name was Louise Brown. And her birth was a sensation because she had not been conceived with regular heterosexual sex. The second baby, IVF baby, was born in India. The third was born in Australia, and the fourth was born in the US. And from there, it was really off to the races with different kinds of people trying to speed up the process and make it more likely that the fertilized egg would implant. So that takes us up to the early 1990s. And then the next major development was called intracytoplasmic sperm injection, or ICSI, in 1991. And that was when some Belgian scientists and embryologists were able to extract a very specific sperm to implant with an egg. Before ICSI, you just scientists would just take basically a drop of sperm and mix it around with an egg, and whatever sperm won, that sperm won. But this way, a specific sperm could be impregnated with an egg. And then there's lots of other technological developments after that, but I'll stop there for now.
No, this was really fascinating. I actually did not know how long IVF has been happening, and the process of it. It's pretty. I mean, I know now, kind of the modern day, but I didn't know how it started. So let's talk a little bit about the technology, because you mentioned that it's, there's so much more of it now. So how has IVF and fertility technology become globalized in the past 15 years? Because it sounds like it started, I think you said, in England, and then India, and then Australia, and then finally the US. So how did this become a globalized situation?
The technology for IVF has changed drastically since the introduction of ICSI. And it's mostly not the IVF technology itself. ICSI is still widely used and practiced. But in the technologies that surround IVF, if you're going to set up an IVF operation, you need very specialized laboratory equipment. You need storage technology. You need below freezing storage units. You need someone to monitor these units. You need someone to be able to fix them if they have any problems or break down. So if you have an IVF clinic, it takes a lot of technology just to set it up locally. And then there's an additional layer, which is oftentimes people want to reproduce using tissue, eggs, and sperm from different countries. Or if they want a specific look for the baby, they may go to one country for sperm and another country for an egg. And the transportation technologies, for example, let's say you want an egg from South Africa and you want sperm from Denmark. I'm just naming a couple countries where eggs and sperm are often purchased. And you are in America. And so you need specialized technology to store the sperm and the egg separately as they get shipped to a different place. There's import regulations that go into whether or not these tissues can be allowed in the country. And then the tissues need to stay healthy enough to be brought together in IVF and then implanted in the uterus. So there's lots of exterior technologies, transportation technologies that need to be involved in IVF, even just to get to the fertilization stage.
So that was interesting. Are there certain, you mentioned Denmark and I think it was South Africa. Are there certain countries that, I guess, I don't know how to word it, the donor or donationship of these, well, they're probably not just donated, they're bought, but are there certain countries that this is a very big industry?
Oh, yes. And different countries are known or have different regulations for either the donation or the sale and purchase of sperm and eggs. I mentioned sperm in Denmark because many people looking to have a baby with Nordic features,
Tall.
tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, light skin tone, will get sperm from Denmark because it's fairly low cost and there's not a lot of strict regulations around the export of sperm from Denmark. In South Africa, many people who want an egg, also with European features, will purchase those eggs from South African women because a lot of white South African women, I should say, because they are their ancestors migrated from the Netherlands, and eggs from South Africa tend to be less expensive than eggs from other countries with people with lighter skin. And so we can also get into people's interest in the way babies look and how that drives these kinds of markets.
Sure. I'm curious, besides those two places, what other places is this a big draw?
Mm-hmm. I guess it depends on if you're talking sperm or eggs or even surrogacy.
Oh.
Because an additional layer of complexity is that sometimes people will take sperm from one place, one country, an egg from another country, and if they're not able to carry a baby themselves, they will have a surrogate in a third country carry the baby, who will then be born and then brought to parents in the fourth country.
I'm assuming the policies and the laws around that will be pretty complicated.
Yes.
Or maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, no, it's very complicated. And as you can imagine, there's been a lot of abuse, particularly of surrogate mothers, because they can be underpaid. They're often in poor countries. And in India, there was such an abuse of surrogates who weren't getting paid, who didn't get proper medical care, and so on. And I should say India and Thailand, that surrogacy with foreign tissue has been outlawed because of the risk of women being abused or not paid.
So where are a lot of the surrogates now? So you said India and Thailand, that's not a place. So where are people finding, if they're not going to carry themselves, or maybe a friend, I've heard of friends, parents, where is kind of the job of surrogacy often seen?
It sometimes has gone to women who are in even poorer countries than, not that India and Thailand are poor, but they have a portion of the populations that are countries that are underregulated, like Cambodia or Vietnam, I would say, are the two places that a lot of surrogate babies are carried to term. Also in Russia, that's another place where if you want a surrogate, even though the surrogate's DNA aren't involved, if you want a surrogate who has generally lighter skin, and if you're also in Russia and you have a lot of money and you can afford a lighter skin surrogate that's closer to you, a lot of people with means choose to go that route.
Okay, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I'm curious how the different countries handle these transactions. And then we can also get into the why. But we're going to take a break and then let's dive into that. We'll be right back.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kan du norsk?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You've decided to give your baby breast milk. We want to help. We're the Boob Group, a group of moms and experts here to support you in your goals, whether you're breastfeeding, pumping, or something in between. Each week, a group of experienced moms openly discuss their success, their struggles, and society's impact on how they feed their babies. We provide an honest, natural, and judgment-free approach to breastfeeding, pumping, milk sharing, and more. Subscribe through your favorite podcast app or say, "Hey Alexa, play the Boob Group podcast." The Boob Group, where moms know breast.
Okay, we're back. So it sounds like this is honestly, this is a bigger industry than I had really understood. My own experience, I have not had IVF myself, but as I mentioned before we started recording, I've had multiple friends that have had that. And it was always just with their sperm and their eggs of a couple. Sometimes I know some gay couples that have had some donations, but it's usually honestly like a friend or a family member. But I didn't really understand the huge broad scope of the business behind donors and sales and surrogacy. So how are the different countries handling these transactions?
Oh, that's a great question. How long is your podcast? It really ends up depending kind of where you are, what you want out of a child, and how much money you have. So as I don't know if you have a lot of foreign listeners, but in the US, fertility transactions are relatively underregulated in comparison to other countries. So you are able, with some red tape, to bring in sperm and eggs and have a baby, or ideally you can get impregnated at least with less difficulty than in other places. In China, for example, it's highly regulated, and you actually do not have a choice. If you decide to undergo IVF, you usually need to be part of a married heterosexual couple. The sperm is chosen for you. The sperm donations are all handled separately. Usually they're taken from Chinese college students or graduate students. There's a terrific book by a man named Ayo Wahlberg on IVF in China. And each sperm donor is limited to like 5 successful pregnancies. So there's no risk of siblings accidentally getting romantically involved with each other. And so if you undergo IVF in China, you don't know who the donor is. The donor doesn't know who you are. And you don't have any choice in the characteristics of the sperm donor at all. So in other countries, sometimes you might, like, let's say maybe the UK is more regulated, especially when it comes to um, IVF to avoid particular disabilities. So if you are trying to if you have a genetic condition that gets passed on through the mother, for example, you might need an egg from somewhere else, and also to have that egg separately tested for other potential conflicts with the sperm. And then only then is it allowed. Only then can you bring in the egg to the country and have IVF performed. So it really depends a lot on where you are, the amount of money you're willing to spend, and of the kind of child that you envision seeing at the end of the process.
Let's go further with that because you mentioned race and appearance.
Mhm.
So let's dive into that. So, how
Mhm.
do race and appearance generally factor into the decision making for the would be parents of IVF created
Mhm.
children?
Interestingly enough, the thing that a lot of would be parents are most focused on is how much the child will look like them. And not that would be parents are want a baby that has some kind of genetic problem or difficulty, but I think the social pressure, I guess, the social expectation in many countries to have a baby that looks like you, and to avoid kind of questions from strangers and family members um, and people out in the world who are saying, "Oh, is that your baby? Doesn't look like you." Um, so there's a lot of, I think, social pressure, both from the would-be parents and from society at large, that expects a child to look like its parents, um, e- even if it's not adopted, even if the child isn't. If the child is adopted, there's not an expectation that the child will look like them.
Right.
But there's such a deep pressure to say that's how you identify your heritage in a way. You identify your family to a great extent by how much they look like you. And not only how much they look like you, but that seems to be a signal of how much they're like you in terms of your values, in terms of your political beliefs, in terms of your how much they will in turn pass on your values to their own children. So looks are not only looks themselves, but they also become a proxy for passing on values and heritage and family memory in
Huh.
intangible ways.
Huh. I never thought of it that way because honestly, I don't think I look like my mother at all. And I think you can
I think when you both smile.
I think, yeah, I don't know. I think you can attest I don't. Although my daughter looks like a little mini me, but to her great distress. But I had not really thought about that. I guess when I was thinking about asking this question, I guess I was thinking like, I do know someone now that I'm kind of racking my brain. I know someone my age who was not able to have her own children. She wasn't able to use her own eggs. And her cousin carried her baby, but she had very specific ideas of how she wanted her baby to look, which looks nothing like her. She has a blonde, blue eyed baby or child. Her child's, I think, 3, and she is not that. So
Mhm.
I guess I was thinking more about in someone's mind, and this sounds horrible, but kind of like their ideal. And that's gonna be different for everyone. Like I happen to love my dark curly hair. And I would be like, yeah, it would be odd for me to have a blonde child. So I would think that, yeah, like you said, looking like that. But I guess I thought people are kind of creating designer, for lack of a better word, like designer kids. But you're saying it's more about what they look like themselves.
I would say that's a good majority of people. I think there's people, again, at the higher income levels, people of higher status who simply want kind of a baby who has the racial uh, characteristics, the physical features of white Europeans, which is a characteristic that are which are characteristics that are traditionally highly valued over having darker skin, darker hair, darker eyes. I think there's a deep level of, colorism and racism at play. There's a scholar named Christina Weiss, who's at De Montfort University in Leicester, England, and she's done this wonderful work on Southeast Asians who go to either South Africa or Russia to obtain eggs, because these are wealthy Asian men who want a baby who has Asian characteristics, but also has European characteristics. So they have a blend of the man's, personal heritage, but also the kind of cultural status value of whiteness, blended into one person.
So
And
that's their designer baby.
Correct.
That's interesting. It's so interesting about what one envisions the quote unquote ideal child to look like, and then the lengths and that they take to do that. There was, as I was looking through your book, there was one passage that really struck me I want to go into because it made me think about the vulnerability of parents. And again, I've watched this from friends of mine who desperately wanted children, so they underwent IVF. And there is not just that desperation, they're vulnerable. They are just yearning for another addition or maybe the start of their family. And so this what struck me. It said, do you love that I'm reading back your own book to you? The most technically advanced methods are developed, tested, and used in countries with the most sophisticated medical infrastructures. And these advancements happen so quickly that regulatory agencies and medical researchers have a hard time staying up to date. This situation leads to for-profit fertility companies promoting pricey, unregulated, or untested add-ons, which may do nothing at best or may cause harm at worst. So I guess my question is, how are hopeful, vulnerable, really those that are desiring this family, how are parents to be supposed to know that the procedure or the tests they're receiving, if they're regulated, if they're tested, if they're in their best interest?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of a two-pronged answer to that. And the first is to scrutinize with great care any add-ons that are offered to you. And I think we can include some links in the show notes for this podcast. And these add-ons are not regulated in the US, but they are in the UK. And the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority of the UK has gathered a list of these add-ons so that people can make their own decisions, even if they're not, a fertility specialist. And so these are things like uterine scratching or endometrial scratching, which is the idea that if you irritate the endometrial lining a bit, the fertilized egg will attach better than in a healthy endometrial lining. Again, it might be offered as an option, but I really encourage people to read as much as you can. There might be less invasive technologies or techniques that are offered to you, maybe like a certain kind of massage treatment or acupuncture or herbal remedies that are supposed to maybe increase, blood flow to the uterus, for example. And I would encourage people really to look into these, get a second opinion to see if that's something you really need. And so my second suggestion is to see if the provider you're working with is a member of kind of the professional societies that support research and best practices in reproductive medicine. And one of them is the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, and the other one is called the Society for Assisted Reproductive Technology. Also good to check if your MD is board certified in fertility treatment. You may be offered this kind of treatment from an obstetrician gynecologist, and they may or may not have additional training in fertility medicine, but they may, be inclined to offer it because, frankly, it's a moneymaker. You can, as you mentioned, a lot of folks desperately want families, and unfortunately, people can be manipulated into buying pricey add-ons that may not necessarily out of malice on the practice of the physician, but certain perhaps out of a money-making impetus may be offered to them. But if they're able to step back, look into these societies, look into the treatments themselves, look into their physician, make sure they're certified in fertility medicine, and even have a look at their success rates, although that's not always the only marker to look for. That is another piece of information to have. So get your eyeglasses on, get your research hat on when you're looking to do this. You can get easily overwhelmed by the amount of information out there, but there are also genetic specialists and fertility specialists who are not physicians, called genetic counselors, and those are folks who can also give you advice, especially if you're coming to wanting children and you have a genetic anomaly of some kind.
That makes sense. Thank you for that. All right, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, what is one final tip or piece of advice you would like to offer parents going through IVF? We'll be right back.
Congrats! You're pregnant! Now, what do you do during the next 9 months? You need Preggy Pals. We educate and entertain expectant mothers and those hoping to become pregnant. Each episode features pregnant moms-to-be as well as experts. Together, we explore topics aimed to embrace pregnancy and empower women as they give birth to their babies. Subscribe through your favorite podcast app or say, "Hey Alexa, play the Preggy Pals podcast." And be sure to visit newmommymedia.com to check out our other parenting shows, Newbies, Parent Savers, Twin Talks, and the Boop Group. Preggy Pals, your pregnancy, your way.
We're back. All right. So you've written a book on this. You know it quite well, this topic. So what would you say to parents that are going through IVF? What's your final tip or piece of advice?
My advice is to balance is of hope with reality. These technologies, as advanced as they are, as expensive as they are, as they can only go so far to help someone or help a couple with their fertility dreams. And there may come a point where the technologies simply are not able to grant or to provide the opportunity for a family the way someone wants. And so I guess I would encourage people to have hope, but not to hurt themselves, go into bankruptcy, take out mortgages to make this happen. If you know you have a genetically, physiologically decent chance that it won't happen. And know that and I guess the other piece is that you're not alone. Lots of people want children. Lots of people are trying to have families and form them the way they want. It is often possible, but not always possible. So they may want to think about other ways of forming families that don't involve technology at this level.
That's good advice. Where can people find your work?
I am, I'm sorry, I'll back it up.
Okay.
You can find my books at major booksellers. I encourage people to look at either the MIT Press for my most recent 2 books on contraception and fertility technology. Encourage people to look at Bookshop, which supports local bookstores, even if you're not physically near one. And I have 2 other books that I did in my earlier years. One is available from the University of Pittsburgh Press, and one is available from Springer. So if you look me up on Springer, University of Pittsburgh, MIT Press, Bookshop, any of those places, my books are available, and I'd love for you to read them.
And what book are you working on now?
I have a book under contract on the global history of abortion, forthcoming probably in about 2 years or so from
You feel like it's changing all the time. You're like, wait.
The context of that book is rapidly changing, which is a good reason why it's taking me so long. Is that the ground sands underneath our feet in that regard are always shifting. But I need to put a stop to that,
You need to you got to get the manuscript too.
The manuscript needs to be finished at some point, and I need to stop researching and do some more writing, but it's hard to not try and
I can imagine the stress with that one, because as soon as you hand it in, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I look forward to reading that one.
Oh, thank you. The research at, global abortion laws, regulations, policies, experiences, fascinating. Lots of pain, and lots of hope, and in some places too.
Donna, I've had so much fun talking to you. I love dipping into your wheelhouse and your passion. It's really fun. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been great fun.
This has been an episode of Yoga, Birth, Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.
In a world where single moms face countless challenges, the Single Mom Podcast offers a space of support and empowerment. Each episode offers stories of triumph, practical strategies, and heartfelt support to those on the journey of solo parenting. With a touch of humor and a wealth of inspiration, this podcast invites single moms everywhere to join a community that understands and uplifts. Discover the power of shared experiences and the strength of single mothers, because together they are truly unstoppable.